So I want to bring in Bloomberg News columnist Alice Schroeder for more perspective on this. Alice is the author of The Snowball, Warren Buffett and the Business of Life, a bestseller. Alice, great to see you again.
Great to see you, Betty.
Now, am I wrong on this or not? I mean, I think that is very key between what was said in the proxy statement and what Warren Buffett said about exactly the date when Buffett knew about this Lubrizol interest.
It's very key, but what is very interesting about it is that Lubrizol's initial proxy statement, which was filed before Berkshire came out with its first press release, had enough information in it that Berkshire knew that Lubrizol's board had been considering this ahead of time. So Sokol did not volunteer the information, but Berkshire knew that Lubrizol's board had been looking at it in December.
Okay, so Lubrizol had actually, according to you and according to that statement, had actually already brought that out there. Alice,
right.
That brings me to this other quote then that I want to read you from the Audit Committee's report yesterday that came out. Really a stunning read through it. But basically in this report, they said, quote, "It did not cross Mr. Buffett's mind at that time that Mr. Sokol might have bought Lubrizol shares after seeking through investment bankers to initiate discussions with Lubrizol concerning a possible Berkshire acquisition." So, according to you, Buffett should have known. According to the Audit Committee, he didn't know.
Well, excuse me, at the time that he talked to David, I actually think it's reasonable that he might have assumed from what David said that David had owned the stock for a long time. Because David said this in response to a question, what made you think of the idea? And David said, well, I own Lubrizol. But what happened then is that weeks transpired during which all this new information came to light that put doubt on what Sokol had said in his story. So by the time Berkshire issued its first press release, which endorsed Sokol and praised him,
right,
by then Berkshire should have known.
Okay, so then is Buffett, according to the Audit Committee, it sounds like they've absolved Buffett because they say that it just never occurred to him, though.
Yes, and it may not have occurred to him in the first place, but the real question is not that he's condemning Sokol now, but why didn't he do it in the first place? You know, why over those course of those few weeks, why didn't he figure out and say something at the time instead of excusing Sokol's behavior on the grounds that it was just not unlawful?
Right, why not admit that in the first place or apologize for that in the first place? Alice, let me quickly read you one other quote that I thought was very interesting in this report. It said, quote, "Mr. Buffett deleted from the release, that first press release, one passage Mr. Sokol said was inaccurate. A passage that implied that Mr. Sokol had resigned because he must have known the Lubrizol trades would likely hurt his chances of being Mr. Buffett's successor." Why would Buffett allow Sokol to delete that passage from the press release?
It's really a mystery because, for one thing, I don't think it should have been David's choice what went in this press release at all. And this report is really vague on what prompted Sokol to give his letter of resignation. It actually doesn't say why at that particular time he did it. So you have this question here, and I don't think it's been answered yet.
No, it hasn't. A lot of questions have been raised. I know certainly a lot of questions will be raised at the annual meeting. Alice, thank you very much. Always a joy to see you and to have you on the program. Alice Schroeder, Bloomberg News columnist.